Hey there, Internet, you're watching this on a Friday, which means that I am currently, when you are watching it, on my way down / already into Florida. There was something wrong with the word order there. But for me, when I'm recording it, it is currently Wednesday afternoon, and do you guys know what that means? What does it mean? It means that this video is a form of time travel. Ooh. Except not really. Live unedited. So, Internet, over the past, week-ish-ness type thing, I have been reading this book, which is, as you can read, the complete Sherlock Holmes Volume 1. This is half of every book about Sherlock Holmes that was ever written by the one Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And so far, I have read 2 of the complete novels that are contained within that collection, and I have pretty much become obsessed with reading Sherlock Holmes. Like, seriously, I can't stop thinking about it, I can't stop reading it, even when I should be doing other things, and it's just kind of absorbed a large portion of my life recently. And while I realize that that's kind of a loserly thing to become obsessed with, I've come to the realization that our entire culture, to an extent, is obsessed with Sherlock Holmes. And let me explain this thing to you. To start, look at television shows, for example. I mean, obviously you've got Sherlock on the BBC and a show called Elementary on CBS, and those are obviously Sherlock Holmes because Sherlock Holmes is the main character in them. However, then you've also got shows like The Mentalist or Psych, where it's just someone with hyper acute observational abilities and they interact with the police on a kind of side job basis, and they solve these crimes that no one else is able to solve. And even regular old crime procedurals like CSI or NCIS or probably Criminal Minds, although I've never actually watched that show. All of these shows are about people who are just unnaturally gifted at solving crimes based on the little teeny tiniest amounts of detail. And that's something that Sherlock Holmes totally invented. I mean, Sherlock Holmes didn't invent it, but Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did and put it into the character of Sherlock Holmes. You know what I'm saying. And the same thing holds true for movies. I mean, obviously you've got the Sherlock Holmes movies that are starring Robert Downey Jr. and are about Sherlock Holmes, but again, all across the board you see these characters who are just really, really good at the whole thinking and looking and observing type thing. And while these are only a very few examples and are limited to the more visual media, I could probably come up with more across the board, but this is my point right here. I'm going to say it now. This character, who was completely fictional and was originally intended to just be in a few little standalone stories, has become this identity that has to a very large extent shaped this public idea of how crime solving and that thing works. And I find that amazing that some book written in, I think 1890 is when the first Sherlock Holmes book was published, could still have such an impact and still be changing and shaping the way we view the world. And then, double layer point, I've become amazed how that can really be true of anything. And I've started to think how do we know that something we do isn't going to create this massive cultural paradigm shift? And while yes, it probably won't unless you go on to write some book or create some character or make some movie that defines a generation or defines a culture or whatever, and the chances of that are very, very slim, it could happen. And that's kind of a crazy and scary and awesome thought. And so I guess my point for this week is, 1, read the Sherlock Holmes books because they're really, really good. Just on that level, they're fantastic and you should check them out. But 2, don't be afraid to go for things, but at the same time be careful with the things you go for, because honestly you never know what's going to come out of whatever little seeds you may plant in the garden of life experience, which are then watered by time and sprout into flowers of amazing future things. And I think I pushed that gardening metaphor too far, but I'm gonna stick with it anyway. Until next week, cheerio, because that's a British thing. Also, every time I now read the word advertisement, I pronounce it advertisement because I've been reading the British people speaking books and my brain does things like that. Anyway, deuces.